case.
Promise you'll find my children.
More important.
We will.
No ending.
I have a sick feeling about this.
More shocking.
Order a tactical rollout for major crimes.
Then
Tell me where the girl is!
this. Major crimes. All new. Monday at 9. Followed by an all-new Perception. Only on TNT.
And that was the promo for this week's episode called Citizen's Arrest. We are at the halfway point. In the first season, there's only 10 episodes. And Citizen's Arrest was written by Duppy Demetrius, and it was directed by David McWhirter, whose name I know I'm pronouncing right. The summary is, after the body of a young man is found, the squad must deal with anti-government radicals and a kidnapping. At the same time, DDA Hobbs brings in surprising information on Rusty Beck. So that's our A and B story. It's a death/kidnapping, and then Rusty Beck and his continuing saga of who is Rusty Beck. So the A story is a kidnapping and a death, which is sad. The first 5 minutes of the show, we find out that a body has been stuffed in a barrel at a recycling center somewhere in Los Angeles. Nobody knows who he is. He has throat burns, and then per Dr. Morales, he was badly beaten, broken bones, broken everything, fractured ribs, just awful things happened to this young person. And but that wasn't what killed him. What killed him was a rifle shot to the back. And as the Major Crimes goes to go inform the family, they find out that not only is their son missing, which they know because the son is in their morgue, is that they have a daughter who is missing as well, and both children have been kidnapped. Through detecting and whatnot, they think that the father did it, which was not the case. It was a disgruntled client who wanted and sought out revenge for the loss of his kids, who were taken away from him by divorce, which has a funny line later for Provenza. And then we find out that this guy who was disgruntled, in companionship and partnership with his father, kidnapped both children. The father shot one, and they were holding the girl hostage. What was your feeling on the episode?
Because the guy, the two kids that were kidnapped, though, did you mention this? Because he was the lawyer that facilitated the divorce?
Right, so the father of the kids, so the kids who were kidnapped, their father was a divorce lawyer, and so the dad's client is the kidnapper's ex-wife, who ended up getting custody of the children. So the guy was disgruntled and wanted the lawyer to pay for having his kids taken away. Which is just, fun and sad. But feelings on the episode, or feelings on the A story, I should say?
Well, what I liked is that we do get a little bit more information about Sharon when she knows a lot about fraternities. And so we learned that her son was in a fraternity, which is, I guess, kind of interesting. What I also found interesting is that when they go to notify the parents and they discover that they walked into a kidnapping, they don't tell the parents that they found the son. They keep that information to themselves so that they can don't cause more problems when the parents freak out. And what I found interesting is that so far Andy has been Sharon's ally, and in that instance he confronts her about that and is very much against keeping that information from the parents. And Provenza, who was so far always griping about Sharon, agrees with her, and so does Amy, which is kind of cute. So yeah, that was a interesting development in the team dynamic, I thought.
But I don't really think they had enough time to tell them that their son had been killed, because they had literally walked in and the mother in hysterium asked about her children. So they really didn't have time. It was when they realized that they walked into a kidnapping situation that they kind of hunkered down and kept that information to themselves.
Yeah, I know. But Andy was like, okay, we should have told them and seen how they react, to see if maybe, because the father was so adamant about them keeping out of it, that Andy's instincts told him right away that, okay, maybe, he has reasons for that, like being guilty. So let's tell them and let's see how they react to see if there's more to it. But Sharon tells him that no, we can't do that, because that they wouldn't be able to keep that information from the kidnappers.
It's what I like about these episodes, and I like about writers who put for just general crime shows, when they put different legalities and what different the different laws per city or per district or per whatever is. I like it when the writers very easily or very carefully put in this information, because if you watch the episodes and you study them or you pay enough attention, you become well versed in the legalities of, for instance, right now, since Major Crimes takes place in LA, you become well versed in the legalities of the LAPD. So Sharon had basically said that they don't really need to tell anybody that anyone was killed. It's more of a what word am I looking for? It's more of a nicety where they don't have to tell them about anybody who was killed at any time. They just do it because it's fair to them. Jen, what did you think?
Well, it's also interesting, going back to what we learned, that we also learn a little bit more about Amy, too, in that they defer to her on how to handle the kidnapping aspect of it, and we learn that that's her background from having worked with the SIS, which is the department that she came from before Major Crimes. So that was also very interesting, too, because she's been the rookie, and, a few of them have been a little annoyed by her eagerness to please, but they immediately are able to defer to her, and that was I like that.
Yeah, what I found interesting there was that it was actually Provenza who disliked her the most before, who suggested that she take the lead on that case. So there's some development there as well.
Yeah, Provenza did a lot of ordering, but at the same time, he knows everybody's strengths and weaknesses, so he's going to point them out and use them when necessary. I think. And then, like Jen said, Amy came from SIS, um, which is the undercover aspect of the LAPD. Um, and so she would know how to handle that situation. With also the fact that Amy is a soldier too, so she knows a lot of tactical things that are greater than the LAPD and its umbrella. Um, I guess moving on to the rusty stuff.
There's one more thing that
Okay.
a funny scene that uh, when they are back in the murder room and they Amy came up with all this technical stuff, like I think they had surveillance drones having a look at the house, and Amy and Buzz teased Provenza about his lack of knowledge, and that was one of the really funny moments that I love about this show.
A blip in a telescope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just there was a few things that I thought was interesting with just this episode. We don't know it yet. We don't know. We know that Sharon Raydor has 2 children. We don't know their names. I just thought it was interesting that they, going from using the information that I know now, watching it and going back, I just thought it was interesting from a writing standpoint that one of the girls that got kidnapped, her name is Emily, which is also, spoiler alert, the name of Sharon Rader's daughter. So I just thought that was interesting. Don't know if that was like a coincidence or what, but I wonder if it helped or was a point in direction for Mary to play the way that she played certain scenes. But that's just my thinking. As some things happen, so they found the kids, and there was an interesting moment. They knew who kidnapped and killed, and they knew his habits. The dude and his father, which is the partnership that we have this week for our murderers, had a bunch of guns. If you guys haven't seen the episode for a while, or you didn't catch the number, let's go with, like, there was an order placed for 21 M4s, which are rifles, 18 AK-47s, and 28 shotguns. Just to throw out a few numbers. That's a lot of guns. And as Amy Sykes pointed out, what do you think that they were going to do with them? And so, as one does in major crimes, they pull in their favorite deputy district attorney by the name of Andrea Hobbs. And in an interesting scene with her, Sykes, and Julio, they go to this gun shop and they confront Mr. Hall and basically tell him that they know it's him and that he has to sign a deal, that he admits to the kidnapping and, I believe, murder of this guy in order to get the death penalty taken off the table. And he plays dumb and I have no idea what you're talking about. And so Andrea leaves Julio with Sykes to deal with Hall. Now, my question to you guys is, do we think that Andrea knew what Julio was going to do?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, because she's like, all right, well, your boss isn't here and I'm leaving, so you can do whatever you want. I just thought it was interesting that I don't know. It was interesting that she would leave him with the suspect, and I wonder if she was kind of hoping for a she wanted him to sign the deal, but what am I trying to say? I don't know if she was actually hoping for a violent way of getting the deal. Is I guess what I'm trying to say. I don't know.
I don't necessarily believe that it was that, so much as the fact that even though, well, Andrea's been around for a while, she's very familiar with this team. And she's very familiar with how Julio does things. He's kind of got this, or has had this, going all the way back to the closer. He's a bit of the sort of quote-unquote enforcer. If they need someone, typically if they need someone to be intimidated, or if they need, you know, spoiler alert, as he's called later, Scary Julio, to be standing in a corner of a room, you know, glaring at someone, that they bring him in to do that. And funnily enough, the fact that he has Amy with him at this point, I found sort of interesting, because usually when going back to the closer again, they want a suspect to be, the word bully is not what I'm looking for, but convinced maybe to do something. It's usually Julio and Flynn. Those are the two that they kind of put on either side. And they, you know, they've in the past been the two enforcers, you know, Scary Julio and Flynn with his hot-headed temper that we've not seen in a while. Spoiler alert, won't get into that. But I think Andrea knew what he would probably do. Maybe not how far he might take it, but she had an idea of where that was going to go and how the information was going to be gotten. And if I remember correctly, as she leaves, she kind of gives Julio a look like, okay, here you go. I did my best. It's your turn. I'm out of here. And then she leaves the scene and leaves Julio to do what Julio does so well.
Yeah.
Right. And then he also gave Sykes like a little head nod, and she kind of returned it and so when Julio goes to basically frame Mr. Hall by saying that Mr. Hall attacked him, it was, I don't know if it was the acting choice of Kieran or it was how she was directed, but she played it to where she was almost worried that Julio was going to go off the rails, but very reserved at the same time, full well knowing that this was Julio's MO. It was just very interesting that she kind of like, well, wait a minute, hold on, at the same time really didn't do anything to stop him. So I don't know, like I said, I don't know if that was an acting choice by Kieran or just a directing thing, but that whole thing was just very, very interesting. In this intimidation tactic that Julio has, it granted them access into the back of Mr. Hall's van, and they were able to get eyes on the trailer in which the suspect and Miss Emily was being kept. And so the father finds out that his son got made, shoots his son, so now Mr. Hall is dead, and then Mr. Hall Sr. begins to shoot at the van in which Julio and Amy are laying back in. And a very interesting thing, which we don't get very much on the show, is a big shootout scene with the LAPD. Julio does a crossfire on the trailer and kills the Hall Sr. So now both suspects are dead, and the family doesn't get a trial. Neither does the city. Not that Hobbs was intending for a trial, but that's the whole point of the deal process, in which Major Crimes is trying to go forward with instead of spending money on trials. Um, yeah, so I think that's pretty much it, right? For that. Oh, an interesting aspect at the very beginning when they walk into this kidnapping situation, as Sharon put it, as the dad is yelling at the LAPD and yelling at Sharon and Provenza and Flynn, Sharon just full on like ignores him and like shoves her cell phone into the mom's hand and goes, "Call. I'm gonna text you a phone number. Call it." I thought that was very interesting and something we haven't seen Sharon do before or really ever.
I think that goes a bit into the direction of Sharon's involvement. Shall we call it involvement in domestic abuse? Because we have seen her taking an interest in that before, and in that situation, while that is not really an abuse situation, we have this very forceful husband who kind of silences his wife. He just yells over her, and she's cowering in the background and not getting her point across. And I think that is something that Sharon senses, and she also, I think, senses that the mother is more, much more eager to get help than the father is. So she sees in this situation, while the guys are dealing with the yelling husband, she sees the more reasonable person to address in this situation. But yeah, I really like that.
That was just an interesting thing for me to see her just kind of push through all of the, not necessarily crap, but just reaching out to her for a, and they didn't have, that was what was interesting too, is that she pointed out that her cell phone was one of the phones that wasn't tapped. And I also don't think that the men thought that their barrel would be found, because their whole intention was to have it taken to a trash
Landfill.
A landfill. Thank you. Yeah. So that was a big oops on their part. But moving on, if that's all of the aspects of the A story. Rusty, so they call in Hobbs to do, I guess, to assist on the case of the kidnapping and the murder. And before they really get to dive into that with her, Hobbs drops the bomb on Sharon that that Rusty's DNA had a hit in the database. Rusty's, the only way that the district attorney's office and the LAPD got Rusty's DNA, with the exception of the fact that he is a material witness, was that in the closer, in the end, they found Rusty with a beanie on his head, and that beanie actually belonged to Philip Stroh, and that's how they got his DNA, was through the beanie. And so they ran the DNA to find that in the database, Rusty was related to a guy who got busted for cocaine in San Diego, and through deductive reasoning and research and whatnot, they come to find out that the guy who got busted for cocaine has a brother named Daniel Dunn, who is probably Rusty's father. And so Hobbs hands that file over to Sharon, and in the midst of trying to deal with this kidnapping and the dead child, Sharon struggles with this information, debating whether or not she wants to tell Rusty. And when she gets this information, Rusty comes busting in through her office like a tornado, wanting to drive, wanting a driver's license, wanting to take a bus, wanting to just get out of the police's grasp, because he's tired of the image in which a patrol car picks him up every day from school. And so he very nonchalantly throws out there that he has to read Hamlet. And immediately I'm like, why? What's so special about Hamlet? I didn't get it. Until later on in the episode where he pretty much lays it out for her, the plot of Hamlet, which surprises her that, one, he actually read the book, and two, that it kind of hit close to home for her, because she had been dealing with this idea or this situation in her head, whether or not to tell Rusty about the fact that they found his dad. So going beyond this episode, the basic skeleton plot of Hamlet is laid out. This is, I believe, like a foreshadowing, I want to say, of the upcoming, the next 5 episodes for Rusty. In the sense that, as Rusty said, Hamlet was haunted by the ghost of his father in the first act. And then his father comes back for a minute, then nothing till the end. Do you guys think that it played out kind of the same? I mean, we'll talk about it once the season's over, whether or not the foreshadowing actually foreshadowed adequately enough or appropriately or whatnot. But what do you guys think of Hamlet being used as a foreshadow?
Jen?
I thought it was an interesting choice. Just like Rusty said, Hamlet was haunted by the ghost of his father, but at this point I don't necessarily believe that it's the ghost of his father so much as the fact it's the ghost of his past. And because Rusty believes that his dad is dead. His mom, had told him that his dad had been in the military and had died. So it's not necessarily his father exactly so much as the fact that Rusty is haunted by what about his life is true and how much of his life is a lie. And who is he really, and what is going to happen to him?
Yeah. Yeah, but it is maybe the theme of Hamlet, this existential crisis that Hamlet is having, that kind of that we can maybe kind of find in Rusty as well, to a certain extent. I mean, who is he? What defines this young man? That is something that we are trying to find out, and that is also something that he is trying to find out. I mean, he's a witness, yes, but that's not all he is. He's been a prostitute, but that's not all he is. So, who is he?
And do you? Yeah, but do you think they so much used Hamlet as an analogy for Rusty, so much as they may have used it for Sharon too? Because going back to the A story, we see more of Sharon the woman, Sharon the mother, and that she's able to so easily relate to that particular case, and that she opens up about herself a little more, in explaining the thing about her son having been in a fraternity and so forth and so on. And it's kind of, I think, the first time we see her really affected for this series by a case, in so much as the fact that the deceased is a child, and this is something, spoiler alert, that you'll see later on. She seems to have a harder time with the kid cases, as well she should. But with Rusty, as we've mentioned in previous podcasts, Sharon is having to take a look at her own life and her own history. So, who is she? What has happened? And how much of a role is that playing with this child that she has brought into her home now? and how is that going to affect him with his terrible, horrible past? So I think in the way that the writers have very masterfully used the two of them as a mirror for each other, I think that whole analogy there could be about both of them and not just Rusty.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, she's probably haunted by the fact that here she has this kid, who has no parents, suddenly having parents who are about to play a role. They both come back for a little bit, and then they leave again, leaving the mess of a heartbroken child for her to deal with.
I don't think it's so much as I don't think it's so much of that, her being haunted by having Rusty around and how his parents are going to affect him, so much as it is how is her past with Jack going to affect him, because sooner or later that's going to come out. And she's having to take a long look at that and how he has affected her kids and ultimately her, and she's going to have to decide, at some point further down the line what to do about him and that situation. Yeah. And I think that could be where the situation comes in. Everything, she mentions in the previous episode, holding on to someone you love when they're gone is hard, and I think we know she was talking about that horrible marriage that she's still mixed up in, even though he's out of the picture. So I think that could be, for her, the issue here. How is that ultimately going to end up affecting Rusty? I would say that has to be in the back of her mind.
And then something I noticed last week also, and it kind of played out again, is that Sharon is playing it very carefully. She doesn't want to become attached to this kid in the event that, yes, he does leave. Something happens to the point where she won't have him in his life anymore. She knows in the back of her mind that there is going to be a day, once this entire trial thing is over, that he is going to no longer be a material witness, and therefore she doesn't need to watch him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so she, I believe, went to go hug him or went to go comfort him or something, and she caught herself. She did that again this week, where she goes to comfort him to do a mom gesture, and then pulled it back, stopping herself and trying and not touching him. I thought it was interesting that she's trying to help this kid do as much as she can, and while she physically can't bring herself to become attached, she's becoming emotionally attached, which I don't think she has realized just quite yet.
Well, I think.
But do you think it's Kate, I think we're thinking the same thing here. Do you think it's so much Sharon trying not to become attached, or is it Sharon trying to respect Rusty's boundaries? Because she at least knows that everything that he's been through with his past and living on the streets and the things that he had to do to survive was a form of physical abuse. I think maybe she's trying to respect his walls in so much as she goes to touch him because that's a natural reaction to her, but he may not want to be touched. So she pulls back so that she doesn't further damage him emotionally before he is ready for that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because I think in the third episode we already saw her being maybe too attached to him when she became so emotional about him running off, and then being so relieved when he was back. So I'm thinking that train's left the station already. She's
well, that's why I'm saying emotionally she's attached, but physically I don't think she I think it's a mixture of both. What you guys are trying to say is that yes, she's trying to respect him. Yes, she doesn't want to infiltrate Rusty's bubble and whatnot, but at the same time I don't think she wants to comfort him too much because she doesn't know when that is going to end. But because at all points, she's a mother, so she wants to mother him, but he already has a mother, and so she doesn't want to. I don't think she wants to like be his mother when he's so focused on the one that ran away.
Yeah, but I think that is about, again, about Rusty's feelings, not so much about hers, because as I see Sharon, I don't think she can do it halfway. She is a mother. She's a great mother, and I think she doesn't have it in her to hold anything back, and we see that again and again when she wants to touch him and she wants to comfort him, but she has to physically stop herself from doing it, and I think that's the part where we see that she just can't hold back because it's so
right. I think absolutely, and I think Kate is right on target with this. I don't think it's so much a fact that she's trying to hold back. It's just that she doesn't know how to comfort him, and her instinct is to comfort him, and she wants to comfort him, but how far with him is too far. Will she end up, ultimately pushing him away by trying to be the mother that her instinct is to be?
Right.
Because I don't think she's holding back from him in any sense of her own feelings, because as Kate said in 103 in Medical Causes, she's already attached. At this point, she's already in. I don't think she's ready at this point to even consider what not having him around will mean, because she sees this child who has been so hurt, who needs to be taken care of, and her instinct is to do that, and she wants to do that. Even when Hobbs brings up, the biological match, you see her kind of draw back from that. I mean, because how much of her telling Rusty is because she doesn't want to tell him because she could potentially lose him, and how much of it is because, he may be further damaged by it. But I don't think it's about her holding back from physically comforting him. I don't think it has anything to do with her own feelings so much as she is struggling to fight her instincts, I think, so that she doesn't smother him before he's prepared for it, which we see that to be a continuing theme where she's having to kind of work him into having that kind of relationship that he should have. He shouldn't be afraid that if she comforts him that she wants something from him, which is kind of Rusty's point of view at this point. Okay, fine, you're hugging me, what do you want? What do I need to do for you now?
Right.
I mean, that's kind of where he's at. So, I mean, and in this particular episode, or am I thinking of the next one, where the boys kind of figure out the history on who this guy is? No, it's the next one.
No,
isn't
it's
it?
the next one.
I'm one ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next one does have a funny moment in regards to that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's not so much her as it is him. She's trying to protect him.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say. She is still protecting him. She's not protecting herself. She is protecting him.
Yeah, I think so too.
Which that whole thing of the protection, it's something I think she struggled with the entire episode, because she was debating whether or not she tells him about his father or not, and Rusty meets the friend of the boy who's killed, and realizes that the LAPD lied to the friend, which makes Rusty irritable. Anytime anybody lies about anything to anyone, Rusty becomes irritable. He kind of snaps at Buzz about the LAPD lying and whatnot, and then brings up the fact that, and it snaps at Sharon too throughout the episode, that withholding evidence is the same as, or withholding information and facts and truth is the same thing as lying. And so he throws that back in her face at the end that
it's the police who lie to everybody. So how do I know that you won't lie to
right,
me?
But what happens right before that? There is a thing that prompts that, and I don't remember what it was.
She asks about Hamlet, and he's like, yeah. He kind of gives a brief summary, and she's like, oh yeah, you actually read it, and she's like, yeah. But did you think I would lie to you about that? It's you who lied to everybody.
Yeah, the police lies to everybody.
How do I know you won't lie to me if you think it's necessary?
Right, and so she replies, I won't lie to you, I promise. I'll tell you everything I know as soon as I've had a reasonable opportunity to access the facts.
Yeah.
And so, or assess the facts. And so, which then prompts her to hand him the folder, and is at their conversation piece for dinner, which he does not take well later on in the season. The information it does not sit well with him. And I guess that goes into fairness and how what we've been doing this season, or the last few episodes anyway, is talking about how this episode relates to fairness. What is fair? Is it fair that you get to take home one kid and not the other? Is it fair that through legalities and whatnot, you are not allowed to see your children anymore because you screwed up? What do you guys think the episode said about fairness?
No, I think that fits in very well to the theme. If you go to the A story, which is the crime itself, is it fair that they've lost a child because, the dad, the lawyer, the parents of the two kids, was just doing his job? So is it fair that his children were taken in retaliation for that? But at the same time, the one guy that was responsible for it, the one that ends up dead, is it fair that, he lost his kids in that divorce, because of whatever was going on? Is it fair that like you said, that they're only going to be able to bring one of them home? Is it fair that daughter has to live, with whatever memories that she's got, the trauma? It really ties into the theme, I think, very well. And then if you go to the B story, the situation with Rusty, we continue to ask the question from episode to episode, is what he has been through and what he continues to have to deal with fair to him? So, yeah, that theme was very present in this episode.
Yeah, and I think we also see more of the this deal-making process that's going on between Sharon and Rusty. That started after medical causes. No, after the last one. After the last episode, where they made that deal about the 30 days notice, and now Sharon adds to it, and she promises him that she will not lie to him. She will not keep anything from him as long as she's had a little time to see what it actually means. So I think they are. She's trying very hard to build an environment for him that he can perceive as fair. And yeah, since what Ellie pointed out earlier, that Rusty kind of goes ballistic every time someone lies, he has big issues about lying, about dishonesty, for obvious reasons. So that is a very important step for Sharon to make this promise to him.
They play they play it very well and very carefully with the Sharon and Rusty relationship, because I don't think either one of them wants to get hurt. Sharon doesn't want to do the hurting. She doesn't want to watch Rusty get hurt. And I think Rusty's slowly starting to realize that his actions, while they may not hurt him, they may hurt other people. And how is that fair to anybody? Bottom line, it's not. But he's starting to realize his actions are no longer affecting just him, but other people, and there's other people he has to now be considerate of, because he's not sleeping on the street or in a car or in, anywhere. He's actually has a roof over his head and somebody to watch over him, and somebody to take care of him if things go south, instead of totally needing to focus on his own well-being and being his sole caregiver. Which is fun to watch. Like we said last week, it's fun to watch the evolution of the show from episode to episode and seeing how these characters either get closer or fall apart. And I think we saw a little bit of that this week, too, how the partnership between Julio and Sykes got a little bit closer, in the sense that Sykes witnessed Scary Julio firsthand, despite the fact that I have a feeling she already knew what Scary Julio and who Scary Julio is. But for us, it's the first time that the two of them have been in a room together. The same thing with Sharon and Rusty. They're starting to get closer in the fact that Rusty doesn't care if she's in a meeting with anybody else. He's just going to come in and just complain. She wants him to talk to her, I think, and he wants somebody to listen to him talk. And part of their deal is to create a line of conversation and keep that line open. So here he is fulfilling his part of the deal by talking to her when he needs to. And this one was a complaint about wanting to drive or wanting a license and needing the police protection detail off because it's starting to bug him. But yeah, do you guys have any favorite moments?
Well, for me, one of them is definitely the teasing between Amy, Buzz, and Provenza. I really like that. And I like what you just mentioned, the fact that we see these relationships grow, that we see these characters draw closer together to form a more cohesive team, because up until that point there were still these there was a lot of friction between them, especially between Provenza and Sharon, and in this episode we see how they finally draw together a bit more. I mean, they're still not over this entire thing, but we see that there's development, and I really like to see this growth between the characters.
Jen?
Scary Julio, every time. I loved it. Don't judge me. No, he knows how far he can push it. He knows how close to the line that he can get, and he gets just there before he, well, in the first season anyway. We won't get into later seasons, but spoiler alert. But yeah, it's always, for me, he is a magical Julio corn. So for me, it's always going to be the Scary Julio, if there is a Scary Julio. That's going to be one of my favorite moments. And in this particular episode, I like that. Another favorite is how very casually and very, I don't know, just how Andy asks Sharon how she knows so much about fraternities. Like you seem to know an awful lot about it. So I like how easily they work into the story a little of her back history, because we're at this point we're still learning about her.
And they
so
do
those two
that,
things.
they incorporate the backstory a little bit, I think, in each episode. Maybe more so this episode than others, but because like you said earlier, Jen, we found out that Amy was part of SIS, and that Sharon's son was a part of a fraternity, and that's how she knew so much. And also, in a very comedic moment, provided by one G.W. Bailey, who plays Provenza, he busts out with the line of, "I have seen lots of divorce papers in my life," and everybody kind of ganged up on him and went, "Yep, it's true. It's true." And he's like, "I've been divorced 5 times." And he pointed out that the divorce paperwork was thin. And something that just interested me, because I'm a weirdo and things like this interest me, and there's a reason for it, and I haven't found out why. But they had an like a crane shot of a bird's eye view of the murder room, where everybody's looking at the files for Mr. Barlow, and Sharon kind of, like, once they start talking about divorce paperwork and whatnot, she detaches herself from the group. And that was just something that interested me, that I found interesting. And I mean, we can dive into the reason why, but for now we don't know anything as to why that could have been, or why she detached herself, with the exception of she was in a marriage that she should be divorced from, but she's not. Going on, I suppose, if that's all of our favorite moments, is fashion. Did we notice anything fashionably positive or negative this week? Not that we're going to go on a 20-minute rant about a jumpsuit, but...
I liked her blouse.
Her dot
Sharon's
blouse.
blouse. Yeah, that's cool. The white and,
yeah.
I think white and blue, white and
purple,
whatever. I like it.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Okay, anything?
I'd like to point out again that I think Stacy might have been on vacation, because, oh my god, that hair.
Yeah.
I wasn't too bothered by her hair, actually. It wasn't
Her hair pulled back that.
It wasn't as noticeable or bothersome as it was at the end of last week's episode.
That's true. But there's no way anything could be as bothersome. Okay, no, I'm not going to say that. I won't say that because
there are more things coming up later.
Yeah, we will not. But so far, we have not seen anything on that level of.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm even going to go so far as to say that I preferred last week's hair to this week's hair.
What?
I don't like that.
The end of last week.
The way they had it pulled back too tight. It was way too severe. It was not flattering at all.
Yeah, that's true. It wasn't a good style, but I have to admit that season 1 hair as a whole is not really my favorite.
It changes. I think it changes. So it goes from like kind of loose to kind of tight. So I mean, which could insinuate that she keeps fixing her hair or whatever. But at the beginning of the episode, I think it was a little bit looser, which is maybe why I liked it and just kind of had that attached to my head. Like, in my mind, I don't know. I'm going to defend her hair. I like her hair.
Yeah, well, I have nothing against her hair at all. We're talking about good versus bad on a very, very high level, so...
I think the problem is they're usually very well at visually expressing the story as well as telling it through the acting and the story writing.
Mm-hmm.
And her look was way more severe, I think, than they were probably going for as far as she presented herself. It didn't jive. And so it really did that particularly bothers me. So I would rather see her in the jumpsuit with the ponytail thing going on than how they had, you know, if it's not going to work with the story. Not that I care.
I agree that it didn't really go with the story, but I still no.
I don't care that it didn't go with the story.
Huh?
I said I don't care that it didn't go with the story. I like the outfit. And compare.
No, the outfit. Yes, I'm talking about that severe hairdo where they've got it pulled back in the front. I love that shirt and ensemble. I'm talking about the hair. It was way too severe than what they were going with, you know, the softer side of her that we were seeing. So it didn't jive.
Yep, I agree.
I don't know.
Still better than the ponytail.
Agree to disagree. I suppose. But nobody matched. So I mean, unless you want to say, like, yeah, I don't think really anybody matched, like, design or anything. Andy, I think, was wearing a striped tie and a turquoise top, or a turquoise dress shirt. The only person I could think of matching color-wise to Sharon was Julio?
Well, I think Julio has always got this earth tone thing going on.
Yeah.
And this week, Provenza did too.
Oh, wait, never mind. I lied. Sharon and Andy match. I found it. They're both... Sharon has has pinstripes on her jacket. Andy has stripes on his tie. I found it.
They match all season. Talking about.
They match all the time.
It's because Greg is a shipper.
Greg is
Let's face
fantastic.
it. Greg is a shipper.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really think anybody. Sykes and Julio, they kind of matched the tie, like the coloring of Julio's tie and the outfit. Yeah, I mean everybody's kind of matching, as they usually do. Do you guys have any other random points to point out?
Not really.
Other moments that you thought was interesting?
I don't think so. Not for this particular episode. I mean, I think it was interesting, although we haven't seen much of Hobbs for this particular series, that when she arrives, she seems to know Sharon pretty well. I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I thought she. I just thought I would agree with you that she kind of walked in, no pleasantries, no hello, no anything. She goes, Captain Raydor is, and everybody's like, that way, office. Yeah,
right. And this is the first time we've seen Hobbs for this particular series, right?
No.
I think so, yeah.
We saw her in 102.
Did we see her in 102?
Yep, that was the one where the body...
We did. Exactly. I don't know why I'm here, but our bosses want me here. So, yeah.
We saw her
that's
in
right.
102.
That's right. It's so hard to keep it straight when we are getting ready to go into season 5, and so, you know, Hobbs is a fixture, so...
Yeah, Hobbs is always around now. Spoiler alert, like I said last week, she doesn't die. She's not going to. Because we love Hobbs and we love Kate and Mazur. So yeah, and so does everybody else. But yeah. So if that's it for that, next week's episode is episode 106. It's Out of Bounds. It's directed by Rick Wallace, written by Ralph Gifford and Carson Moore. The teaser for the episode is Sykes, girl, you in trouble. And Rusty is curious of new details that arise about his life. So you guys can, if you guys haven't seen it, you guys can figure out what that means. If you have seen it, let us know what your favorite parts of that episode were, and we'll try to incorporate it in the show. You guys can follow us on Twitter at MC_pod. You can follow us on Facebook at Major Crimes Podcast. Thank you to everybody who has been listening to the podcast on SoundCloud. We are getting it updated, or we are getting it attached to a couple websites. That information has yet to be worked out. Yeah. Just let us know what you guys think, and we will see you all next week.